Okay, what should we talk about first? You want to talk about the most probably interesting part of your life? Or should we just talk about conspiracies and aliens?
Let's start with just kind of breezing over some of the topics that you guys had, and then we'll get into my life.
Okay.
It's like some of the, I don't know, some of the things we've already talked about. Like I saw, I don't know, a couple of things like you guys talked about was legalizing drugs. I like that topic a lot. Had some input.
Let's just talk about the moon very first.
Yeah, let's get that out. Let's get the moon out.
Okay, what do you think the moon is?
So this was the thing. So they said, so I heard that I was listening to read these books on David Icke. I like calling him Icke because I can't pronounce it. It looks like that. But he actually had in this book that he said, and I'm not, it could have been him or Jim Mars, but they said that the reptilians are one of the first people that were here came and brought the moon with them. And because, and I'm not sure why, but it's because it's so perfectly round. And then they said that they brought, that's where it's placed it's so perfectly between the earth and the sun, like that there's not, it couldn't have been like a half chance. So I guess it could have been the Big Bang Theory, but then there's the fact that when they went up there and they think it's hollow and they think that there's people living in it. We don't know enough about the moon at all, but it's just it's a theory that they brought up. So
I didn't know that David Icke.
Yeah.
What do you think about him, T?
Yeah, I don't know much about him.
He's like one of the original reptilian guys.
He is, Ike is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's the one that came out and started talking a long time ago about the reptilians and basically said that the royal family, he came right out in one of his books, said the royal family were reptilians and he talked a ton about it. Like his book was, I'm not sure which one it was, but I had it read when I was locked up and I went through it all, but it's super interesting, but really complex. He started off talking, he also talked about the money from the people that have all the control, like the
Illuminati, secret societies,
and the money where the money came from, and he broke that down. It was super interesting. And then
where does he claim to get his information from?
I'm not sure. I mean, but he's just been studying it forever. But
studying what? How do you study reptilians?
I don't know. On that, I don't know how you would do that. That's a good question.
Because I know there's people that claim to channel stuff from other beings and stuff like that, but I'm just wondering this.
He also talked about is it not Michelangelo? Who was the one that disappeared for a long time? That had all of his drawings for he had helicopters and all kinds of things.
You're talking about the inventor guy.
Well, he was the artist too. He drew the one with the supper, and he has all the stuff in his art.
Da Vinci.
Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of he went to supposedly disappeared for 2 weeks and went into this cave, and when he came out, he knew all this stuff. Well, they think that that's where he could have gotten it, some of his information, or he had some visions or something, some experience. Because his art is unbelievable. And
so, what about the pyramids?
The pyramids, so they weren't built by hundreds of slaves dragging things on logs. There's no.
It's impossible.
Completely impossible.
It's impossible. There's stones there that we don't even. There's stones above the king's chamber that we don't even have cranes that exist now that could lift that much weight.
Yeah, not just those. I find that so. I've been a heavy equipment operator for 20 years, and I know with what we have in our equipment, they found stones, and I find a lot of this was in ancient aliens, like those walls that are fused together and have those stones that are.
Which, if you don't know much about aliens, Ancient Aliens is probably the best place to start.
Yes, exactly, because they break it down on a really
Ancient Aliens and Bob Lazar on Netflix.
So Ancient Aliens, it started back in I think 2009, and Bruce, my brother, he just make fun of me because I didn't want that show over and over, because I think that was one of the first things that they started publicly trying to inform us slowly into what where we're at now. It's been 11, 12 years now that show's been on, and some of it's real repetitive, but then it gives you a real base. If you want to really start looking for questions, if you start watching that show and just see the things that they have that they say that there's no answer for, like people have studied it, and all these guys, like those walls, the stones. I mean, the fact that
was that you that sent me something today about NASA hiring 24 people to study how humans will react to the discovery of alien life?
Rogan posted it.
Yeah.
Was it Rogan that posted that?
Crazy, right?
That's real then?
Yeah, it's real.
What they said that we wouldn't be able to handle the truth if it was
so NASA hired 24 people basically. Look it up.
Yeah.
Because I could be way off on this, but they hired people to study humans' reaction to finding out about.
So the New York Post, NASA hired 24 theologians to study human reaction to aliens.
Yeah, so I think that's super, like 100% the reason that they haven't just come out. Like if we just they just popped up until when they say, okay, well, there's aliens here, so they've been slowly trying to get us to be able to accept this information, and I think Ancient Aliens was a huge part of that. That information to slowly integrate society into thinking, see how they would react, see what kind of things that
But why?
Because they're real. Because there's.
I know, but why?
Why are they implementing it? So slowly, I guess. And why do they care?
Well, yeah, and also like, are we sure that this isn't some sort of psyop by the government for more control? Because I mean, I definitely believe that aliens are real.
Okay.
I'm not 100% convinced that we're in communication with them, but if I were a betting man, I would bet on that.
I would too.
But it kind of seems to me like if they're gonna use aliens, they're gonna use it for some sort of control
or fear. Fear of
Same
control.
thing.
Yeah,
they use fear to get more control.
For the government for that, and of course they're behind everything. So they're possibly behind anything that happens in Hollywood, which means they're behind Ancient Aliens. So yeah, but I don't know. I don't know that if it's getting to the point where they can't deny it anymore because there's so many sightings of UFOs, or because I'm not sure what their end game would be, but it's not.
But you think the government is in communication with aliens?
I think the government. I think they've been in communication with them. I think that they've slowly given us technology that you look at the technology that we have grown in the last 30, 40 years. I mean, my favorite thing is Bluetooth. You take Bluetooth. No man just sat there and said, "Oh yeah, I got this."
I wonder how Bluetooth was discovered. There's got to be a story.
How does it even work, dude?
Yeah.
Like we use it every day, but how does it work?
Exactly.
I just hit this button on my phone.
Tell me that some guy just sat there in his lab.
Yeah.
Look that up.
And
how Bluetooth works.
How was Bluetooth invented?
Yeah.
How was Bluetooth discovered?
And when was it invented?
I think that's one of my biggest.
If this looks like a propaganda story at all, then we definitely got it from aliens, and they're giving us more technology.
Yeah, slowly giving us technology. Like I believe that a lot of it was a reverse engineering.
What if everything they do is through communicating with our minds, though, and we don't always know that they're communicating with us that way?
Could be.
We just think it's an idea that comes to us, like people get inspired, right? Like in religion. What if that's just aliens communicating with us?
It could be. I mean, I believe, like we guys have talked about it, like the Matrix is that we're all connected to Source, which I think that we're all connected in the same way, and I believe that we do whatever the higher power or God or Source is what I like to call it, is that we're all connected and we're all part of this matrix. So
we're connected with the aliens too.
Exactly. I think that because they communicate telepathically, and if they communicate telepathically, it's the same thing as an idea. So they already know how to do that. They already know how to communicate with their mind. So then I think they could give us ideas. I think that 100% they could do that. I mean, so I've read a whole bunch of stuff on near-death experience, which I love. It's one of my other fascinating things. And like so many people that had died and come back said that they could communicate telepathically, like they didn't talk when they went to heaven or wherever they went.
Yeah, but that's how DMT is.
Yeah.
That's how DMT is.
Yeah.
Like when feel like I've had interactions with other beings, it's just
the mind.
it's not really even a way that like you would explain it. Like, oh yeah, you're communicating through the mind. You just have like an understanding of what they're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what a lot of people said. Like, there's a study.
But that's what happens when you die is your brain dumps DMT. So the question is that actually connecting you to something else? Is that connected you to something that's beyond this life? Or is it just a drug that your brain dumps to
open up the veil, so we don't have
does DMT connect you to something that's real, or is it just a coping mechanism for your body?
No, so a lot of people said they talked. I mean, there were so many different experiences where they had the same exact things that they met their relatives that had passed.
Yeah, and people say the same thing about DMT, right? Like with the machine elves.
Yeah, it's the same. So
have you had a near-death experience or no?
No, I haven't, but I got super fascinated by it. I read everything. I read the first book I read was Life After Life, and Dr. I'm horrible with names, but I'll think of it.
What's my name, Bart?
Your name is T. Carter. I like to call you T. Carter, but that's name. Anyway, so this book, he studied like 150 people or more. I'm not sure, but in the 70s that had near-death experiences that had died and come back, and they found so many similarities that that he put in a few books. And
I've heard about this, but isn't one of them that everyone sees Jesus?
A lot of people do. They do see.
What is that?
I don't know. That's a hard one, because even like this lady from Islam or from over there that lived in the Quran that don't believe, she died, and she also said she's seen Jesus, and they all say that just this huge feeling of love, this inner peace, like automatically they just feel this super emotion of straight, just pure love constantly while they're there, and it comes from this light. I don't know. It's weird because people said that they go and they even see the pearly gates and the streets of gold.
Well, I think that's how the mind works.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think that there's not really any wrong answer, because I think you're probably going to go where you believe you're going to go, because I think that's how consciousness works. Yeah. If consciousness is just existing in a void, then consciousness can be wherever or whatever it wants.
Yeah, the interesting too to me was that there's a few people that said that they had a negative experience, like they went to hell. I mean, not very many, only one or two that said that they went to this.
Yeah, so that's why I think some people live their life with fears like that and beliefs that hell exists, and so when they die or when they're connected to
where they believe,
they go to where they think they're going to go.
It kind of goes against. I mean, you and I were both raised, all of us were raised extremely LDS, and we were taught that, the Godhead, and heaven and hell. And I just don't know that I believe that anymore. I just think that I don't think that there's a hell.
I do believe there's a hell, but I believe it exists right here. And it's only in contrast to heaven, right? Yeah. So you can't experience heaven if you don't.
There has to be duality.
There has to be a hell. There has to be a hell.
The pendulum has to be on both sides. There has to be
because I believe that's how our universe is made. This matrix that we live in, our universe 100%. Is built on duality, and so you have to experience. You don't necessarily have to experience one to know the other, but you have to, in some way.
Known,
it has to be there.
Yeah, I agree. You can't have one without the other. Duality is a huge part of our build up with our lives and everything that exists. So that's why allegedly there's a God and a devil, like the devil has to be, because there has to be the opposite of what that is. But yeah, it's interesting. Anyway.
Okay, so back up.
Yeah. Let's go back to David Icke.
No, let's go back to your story.
Okay.
Tell a little bit more about yourself.
So
whatever you want to tell.
I grew up, right here in Farmington, Utah, super conservative and extremely LDS. I come from a big family of 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and grew up extremely staunch LDS, and had a great childhood, had a great I don't know. It was just, especially from what I experienced later in my life. I mean, I didn't really realize it, but real conservative, super, what's that word? What's it when you're not out in the world? Anyway, so did that. Graduated from high school, went to California, lived with your family for a few years, met my wife, came back. Always kind of worked construction when I was younger, had a bunch of jobs. Met my wife in California. We went to school together and then came back here to Utah, and everybody, was supposed to go on a mission, but I didn't do that. So it wasn't really something that.
Were you like out of the church at time, or you just?
No, I actually really tried. When I was in California, I went through the whole process to go on a mission, and I got worthy, and my bishop down there told me I was ready, and I came back here to home, and my home bishop told me I went into my interview, and he was like, he'd known me my whole life, and he's like, I just don't think you're ready. I can't imagine you being ready, and he wanted to keep me here for like 6 months and make sure. So I walked out of there, and that was it for me. I was done with the church after that. Just kind of was like,
fair enough. I probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah, because I'd really worked hard down in California and did everything, and wanted to do it because we were taught that your life would be miserable if you didn't do it. Anyway, so I walked out of there and never really was part of the church again. Got married.
Until you were back in prison, right? Till a little bit later in prison.
Yeah. Then I got
back into it.
I got back into it, so I'll get to that because I was at a point where I just figured that I had to do something different, but I'll talk about that when I get to it. So I got married. I always wanted to be a firefighter. Was something I always wanted to do. So I took my EMT course and started applying to all the different fire departments. But at the time, it was super difficult. It's probably still really hard, but to get on the fire department, especially around here, there was so many. There was just the same families. If you didn't have,
it was very political.
Very political. Yeah, if you weren't part of a family that had. Then it was real hard to get in, but so I tested Salt Lake City. I was horrible at taking the test, because you got to do a practical and a written, and then an interview. And the practicals I was always really good at, but the written part I struggled with. And so I studied and finally passed. Got a passing score with. I got first on at Kaysville City part time. I was super excited. And learned.
How old were you?
I was 24.
Okay.
24. I got on there, and then while I was on part time there, I started testing for Layton, and I got past their test and got hired on at Layton City part time. I was there 5 months, and then I got hired full time, and so I was full time at 25, and loved it.
Just a firefighter, or you? EMT.
EMT. You had to be an EMT before you could even take the test.
Okay.
So that was you had to be an EMT basic. So they and at the time, Layton ran. It was before they got 4 stations now. And when I got hired on in '95, they had 2 stations. It was real hard. Usually, it took like 2 years at being part time to get hired full time. So
so you're full time at Layton. When you were 25, how long did you work there?
I worked there until I was 30. I worked on 9 years.
Okay.
So during that time, I was married and everything was great. Me and my wife, she was a hairdresser, and then she taught aerobics, and we kind of had everything going for us. And I had a lawn business on the side. I did drywall. I mean, every firefighter, because you only worked, at the time you worked 11 shifts a month, 24-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. So you had a lot of time off. And
so you're doing like 2 on, 4 off or something?
So you do 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off, 4 off.
Okay.
So they've changed it now, I'm not sure, but at the time you would always have what we called a 4-pack. You would have a 4-pack off after your three shifts.
So then you could do landscaping or something.
Yeah. So I had a lawn business and for a few years, and then I sold my lawn business, and we bought the salon that Brenda worked at in Layton, Fifth Avenue Salon. So that was a huge part. Everything, it was great. So I sold that, my lawn business, and invested got an opportunity to buy that salon. So it was at the time the biggest salon in Davis County. It was really nice. It was in the law office and I think it had 22 stations. So there was probably only 10 people that were working there when I bought it, because the owner kind of he owned the building and he just didn't really have a lot to put into it. That's why he wanted to get rid of it. So we bought that, which my wife had worked there, knew hair. I didn't know anything about hair except for what, she'd done it for 10 years. So I managed that and owned it, and then she just did all the quality control, and I ran the business side of it.
And at the same time, you were a firefighter.
A firefighter, yeah. So so everything was great. Like our life, we traveled, we went all over the place. Like our life was really good. We drank quite a bit. And that's when I started partying too much. Slowly started drinking too much, and I guess I got to get into this at some point. So I started using meth with some of my guys that I worked with that worked for me in the lawn company the first time. So it was the first little while
which it's pretty common for meth users to start in like some sort of labor job, right? Like construction workers.
It was then. So then it was actually just crank. Crank. Before meth actually came out, the methamphetamine that's out there today was just a crank. They called it peanut butter crank. It was a lot different.
Did you just smoke it, or what do you do?
No, they only just snorted it. So they just
snorted.
break out little lines in the truck and we'd snort it.
So do you remember like the first time you did it?
I do.
Had you done drugs before that, or what?
So I'd done cocaine in high school, well, probably right out of high school a couple times, or once or twice. And had smoked marijuana in high school. I didn't like marijuana. Like it was just never, or still is just not my thing, but it's too different for me. But I was also, I guess I should say this. So I was on something called Desoxyn. I was ADD all through. I struggled with school and
basically Ritalin.
Yes. Well, this is Ritalin.
Basically meth.
Not basically. Desoxyn, which is the first one they put me on, if you look it up, it's actually methamphetamine. Mm-hmm. It's not an amphetamine. And that was the first one they put me on. It was.
How old were you?
I was in 6th grade.
Imagine that, dude. Oh, you can't focus. Here's some meth.
Yeah. So seriously,
they're still doing it, though.
I know,
they're still doing it.
Desoxyn, and nobody. This was before Ritalin. I was one of the first kids in Utah to be on one of these medications, and I remember like it would change me. Like I wasn't hungry. My friends could tell within like 2 minutes if I'd taken that pill, and I didn't like it because it made me super unfun. I mean, at that age, I was trying to like fit in and make friends, and when you're in junior high, you're starting to build your social things that make you who you are, or trying to, it's a hard time in life. And so I either took the medication or the pill and was super like serious and not fun to be around. But my parents were making me take it. You had to take it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, I mean, it was methamphetamine. So that's the crazy thing. And I took that for like 2 or 3 years, and then it went to Ritalin. Ritalin was later, but that was it was different, but it wasn't methamphetamine, but the Desoxyn.
How long were you on Ritalin? All through high school? Or?
All through high school. So I kind of quit taking it after high school, but so it was kind of the same thing, but just a lot more intense when I did the first line of crank. Mm-hmm. And you just had, we could work all day long and just hyper focus. And so then we started using it.
And you're probably what? How old are you? 30? Are you 30 yet, or no?
No. This was
you're like 26,
26. Yeah. So I used it on the weekends or my time off. Like it just slowly became something that, more and more of that, we were drinking a lot, and it just became a habit that later became a real problem. But as first, I was super serious about my job. But I was also using on my days off. So, you'd be up all night, and then I'd go to work. So it definitely affected me. So it slowly took, then just kind of stayed the same for a couple of years, 27, 28. Brenda was ready to have a baby at 29. We argued about it. Like to me, it was, I just was happy. Our lives were perfect. We were making a ton of money. Then, you know, I mean, with the salon and both of our jobs, I mean, we did wherever we wanted. And we went on a bunch of vacations. We did whatever we wanted. We bought a boat and jet skis and had a great life. And then she wanted to have a kid, and I wasn't ready. I should have been ready, but so I turned 30 and she got pregnant. And this is what, and so at the time, we'd built the salon up to where we had probably at least 19 or 20 full-time people. It was booth rental, which made it really easy. So you just have to, basically they have to worry about their own clientele. So all I did was manage the receptionist and the books. And
then they just rent the booths from you.
They rent the booths. So once we filled up the booths, and that I hired a really good receptionist, and I had a guy that did all my books, and basically, I would just go there and make sure everybody was okay. I'd take, you know, on my days off and take pizza. I got along with it. It was super fun. You know, I loved all the girls that worked there. They all loved me. Then Brenda got pregnant, and then things went bad. So at the time, I kind of felt that she kind of took that choice from me, and I wasn't ready. And I've had a lot of time to think back, and, you know, at the time I was mad, but it was fear. I was afraid. I was afraid to be responsible for another human, you know. It just, the responsibility of it.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
I was scared. I mean, I watched people and the way I was raised, and I just wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of another human being, you know. But I should have been, but I wasn't.
So you started running from that, or what?
I did. So, and then I started just staying out on my boat for weeks at a time, you know, all my days off. And Sierra was born, she was beautiful and amazing. I have an amazing daughter. I look back now and I can't imagine not having her in my life. So definitely was for the good of me, you know. She's definitely the best part of me. So I started using more and more, got more into the drug world, started meeting people, and the drug world's a whole different world. It's right here around us all the time. Like Pace talked about it. Like, people don't know Ogden has so many drugs in it. Like, I started meeting people in Ogden, and I mean, that's where, as it got further on, which I can talk about later, but at the time I kind of got into it just a little bit, just enough to be able to get my bag of once a week or whatever. Had a couple sources, and so.
And then this was meth that you were still using? Or what?
Yeah.
And the wife knew that you were using?
Yeah. Yep, she knew. She took a little bit here and there, but not once she got pregnant and she was done. Everything really, she was really responsible. But we she knew and didn't like it, of course, but because I didn't practice moderation, you know, my addiction side kind of took over, and I slowly got sucked into it more. So we had Sierra, and then I think she was 1, and then I started having affairs, and pulled away from Brenda and my life, and all the people in the salon. The girls got mad because at the salon they could kind of tell that I wasn't engaged, and, you know, you can kind of. I just started withdrawing, pushed away, and wasn't. I wasn't happy. I was mad. And I went on for, I don't know, a couple of years, 90, when Sierra was born in 2000. And then the next year and a half was just crazy bad. Like, Brenda ended up moving out, and I had a girlfriend move in that was a dancer, and not, you know, just got more and more away from all my responsibilities. My bills went bad. So 2 years of that, basically, and then I started getting in trouble with legally, like just doing stupid things. I got like a shoplifting thing that was just dumb, and then another charge, and I ended up getting in a fight with this kid that was kind of a friend. I went over to his house, and we had words. I ended up kicking his door in and beating him up. And so I got a criminal assault. I got a criminal mischief, a felony trespassing, and a simple assault. And I took that, and everything was bad in my life. Like,
were you still working fire at the time or no?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was still a firefighter for right around there. So I broke my foot and had surgery. And I was also, at this time, I started using a lot of opiates also. So I'm going to back up. I started using pain meds for my back and had a prescription for Percocets and Loratabs for probably from when I was 27 on. And at one point, I think in 2002, I got drug tested at work and failed it. I'd also had a prescription for the meds, but it was it was a ways past. So I mean, it was kind of a toss up, and they just said, well, you can leave or we can fire you. So I left, from Layton City. I'd been there 8 years. I was an engineer and left there, and then just started driving truck, doing other stuff. And I think that's about the time that I got the first charges and they wanted me. So I never really got along with the police in Layton because I fought with them all the time, because they always want to take everybody to jail, and being on the fire department, you have the option to release the patient. And I struggled because in the back of my mind, I always, I felt bad, especially for people that would overdose or whatever. We go there and we want to take them to the jail, and our system is so fucked up that they lock everybody up in attics. And this was just the beginning of me learning about this. And at the time, I kind of didn't get along with the cops because I wouldn't release a lot of the patients. And so they kind of had this vendetta against me. And then after I left, I kind of gave the department a black eye, being, I think I got wrote up in the paper. It was later. It was after that. So I'll go back to the assault. So I took that case and I went all the way to jury trial because they wanted me to have a felony for the trespassing. And I ended up winning, getting that part. The jury found me not guilty on the felony, which was kind of a break, I thought. But the Davis County prosecutor, he was super pissed and went on. And then 2 months later, they came to my house with the search warrant, saying a whole SWAT team came and arrested me and went through my house. And basically they called in the feds and gave me a federal charge of, and this was a bullshit thing. My charge was a known user of a controlled substance in the possession of a firearm. So this was a charge they just made up. So because I beat them in that little charge on that, they found another way to give me. They wanted me to have a federal charge because if you're charged federally, there's no bail. You can't bail out. So they brought in the ATF and they went through my whole house. They didn't find anything. But because I had a prescription for Loratabs and I had a shotgun hanging on the wall that had no firing pin, and I wasn't a felon, so I could have a gun. But they said the charge was a known user, which I'd never had a drug charge before. I didn't find any drugs in my house. But they said that because I was using a controlled substance, even though it was prescribed, that I was a known user of a controlled substance in possession of a firearm. That was my federal charge.
Good shit.
Yeah. No, and everybody, and I didn't know anything about the criminal justice system at the time. I'd never been part of it. So they locked me up.
So that was your first time in jail, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd had a couple of years where I went in and bailed out, but this is the first time that I went in and there was no bail. And
so you were in the jail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in the jail with this charge that I knew nothing about. I didn't even understand the difference between federal and state at the time. It's totally different. So the Fed charges are, they're a lot longer sentences and much different, much more difficult to. The Feds have a 98% conviction rate. So, but this one was probably a favor called in by the some of the prosecutors or whoever had it out for me at the time, which I don't even know, but they did. 100%. So they'd been following me. They really didn't have anything, so they just made up this charge they wanted me to have a felony so that I couldn't be a firefighter anymore. I'd actually gotten a job at Salt Lake County at the time. I'd taken the test. I'd passed the test, and I was waiting to be hired on, but things weren't good in my life. I wasn't doing well. But so I went to jail, and I fought this charge, or I tried to. I was actually in the Weber County for 11 months fighting this, and I was just blown away by it. I had a public defender and the public defenders don't help. They're horrible. They make deals with like bargaining chips.
Yeah, they're all on the same team.
They're all on the same team. And so this lady, I told her, so they came to my house an hour and a half before the search warrant was signed, and they took me into custody. That by itself should have been thrown out. They didn't have any right, but I wasn't staying there, so they knew they had to come when I was home because I was never there. And I found out later that the search warrant was actually signed by the magistrate at like 5:30, and they came at like 3 o'clock and arrested me, and had no right to do that. That by itself should have been thrown out of court, and they knew that. So they gave me a public defender that wouldn't help me. I told her I wanted to file my right for a speedy trial, so that's 90 days right there. So as long as you don't file any motions. So I waited that 90 days, and then I got to that day of my trial, and she withdrew from my case for no reason, just because without counsel, then you're 90 days out further. So then they gave me another public defender, which...
You're in jail this whole time?
The whole time, with no...
You're like, what the fuck's going on?
But man, no idea.
What do you remember about the very first time being in jail for more than a night?
It's a horrible feeling. I've got it so many times now but the first time you just losing your freedom like that, you worry constantly about your stuff, your truck, your payment, your house.
And you're coming off drugs, right?
Yeah, coming off. So meth's not super hard to come off of. All you do is sleep and eat. You know what I mean? It's not, you don't have a lot of physical discomfort. You're just super tired and hungry because you haven't eaten and your body's been eating itself. And so it's one that you just kind of sleep off and eat everything and just stay in bed for. So when I got later on, when I started using heroin, and that was much, much harder because your body's physically dependent on it, and you get super sick and shit yourself and sweat and just weeks of misery until it's over. And they still do that. They take people up. They don't give them anything to help them. And it's horrible. Anyway, so I ended up they transported me out of Davis County to Weber County,
After 11 months?
No, I was after a couple of weeks. So I started writing a bunch of letters to telling them that I was, like being mistreated, like I've been, writing to anybody. I didn't know what to do or something. So the feds came back in and they moved me because Davis County was like, look, this could be a lawsuit. We don't want him here, because they knew that it was probably fucking fraudulent or whatever. And they, if it ever came back on them. So they moved me to Weber County, which was worse. And so there I started, I didn't know anything about how anything worked, but I just started beating people up or fights because there's a lot of bullies, like guys picking on other younger people, and the prison system messed up. And so I just started got in a bunch of fights while I was there, which I didn't know, but that goes on your record as your classification for where they put you in the feds. Fought my case. I ended up staying 11 months. They finally told me that I wouldn't plead guilty because I knew that I didn't have a case, and I knew it was bullshit. So I finally got a different attorney. Deirdre Gorman was her name. She's a private attorney, but she does work as a public defender. And she acted like she was doing all this, I was so tired of being in jail after 11 months. I was to the point, but I knew if I pled guilty that I would be done as a felon, because then there was no longer a chance for me ever to be a firefighter again. So I didn't want that, but they just break you down. They just leave you in these shitty circumstances, and just they keep putting your court date out months and months. And finally, she came to me and she's like, "Look, if you plead guilty," she's like, "we'll put you in a halfway house for 12 months and you can be back to your life." She's like, you know, this is your first felony, blah, blah, blah. Just, you know, you can be out. And that was the agreement between me and the prosecutor and my attorney. That was a signed a plea. They called it a plea agreement. So I signed that, and then I went to court on my sentencing day, and I'll never forget it. The judge sat out there and he goes, looked at it, and, you know, he was like, well, he's like, blah, blah, blah. This really had nothing to do with me. I don't agree with this. And he gave me, he sentenced me to 21 months into prison. And my attorney didn't say nothing. Nobody says nothing. Like
this was a couple of weeks after you were first arrested. Is that what you're talking about?
No, this is 11 months.
You're already 11 months into being in jail.
Yeah, been in jail 11 months. Been through hell the whole time. Lost everything, but I tried to fight it because my first public defender went 90 days, withdrew. I got another one 90 days. They just kept fucking with me and making sure that I didn't get
okay. And you're
court.
sure that you weren't on meth and paranoid about everyone coming after you?
No, I'm sure. The way it laid out, and I found out later that there's some people that really hated me because I beat them in that jury trial. For one thing, they were pissed about that, and then there was people that didn't want me ever be a firefighter again, and it had nothing to do with my paranoia. I mean, everybody thought.
Yeah, I know. I just wonder if it had a lot more to do with you making so many bad decisions.
I definitely made bad decisions, 100%.
Right, because the story that I'm hearing is that the world was against you, but I'm just wondering why, and why was your perception that way? Is it because it was really that way?
Well, because I wasn't doing
you weren't treating people good and you were making a lot of bad decisions, or was this really like a corrupt? I'm like legitimately just curious. I'm not saying it's one way or the other.
It's a legitimate question. So once I learned about, at the time I didn't really get it. I'm like, why is this so difficult? Why? You know, but after being in the system and being I've spent 12 years in prison and I've watched this whole system work. And I look back now and see exactly what they did.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't know how, I was shocked by it. I couldn't believe that my public defender wouldn't help me, that she couldn't see blatantly that the search warrant by itself would have gotten the entire case thrown out. That's a fact. And they didn't ever want that to get into court. So they did anything they could do to keep
because they're all on the same team.
Yeah. And they knew that they didn't have any.
Which is why it pays to have money to pay for a good attorney.
Yeah, exactly. Especially then. But I didn't
know that.
I didn't have any money, but I knew that they didn't have a case. So I was super stubborn. That's why I sat there for 11 months. But I knew that if I got that one document into the court, that it would be thrown out. Because I knew how the times worked. I knew that they have to be dispatched.
But your attorney didn't.
So they kept telling me it was nothing, saying it was nothing. It was nothing because that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But it was a lot. That by itself, that they got a search warrant illegally, came to my house without any right, and came inside my home without having a warrant for me, arrested me, put me in custody.
All right. If there's any attorneys listening to this, fact check that and tell me. So I'd like to know if that's true.
Yeah. Can they come and arrest you and put you in custody and then have the search warrant signed 2 hours later by the magistrate? You know, that by itself. But I never.
Okay, so you've done 11 months.
Yeah. So then
what was your mindset the whole time?
I mean,
you're in prison.
I thought I was getting out. I thought that if I fought this would be out. I never thought I was going to go to prison. Okay. I mean, I thought that for sure that they didn't have.
So you were optimistic?
They had kind of, but miserable. I never had a drug charge. They didn't find any drugs in my house. They didn't find anything that I wasn't.
Only thing I found was Lortab that you had a prescription for.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was no illegal drugs. I'd never gotten caught with any drugs before that. I'd never had any. They knew I was probably using, but they didn't have, the way they wrote it up by itself, a known user, I wasn't a known user. So I was definitely railroaded on that first charge, and so I'll go back to my sentencing. So this was 11 months in. I took a plea agreement. I get to sentencing, thinking that I'm going to a halfway house. The judge basically says that he sentenced me to 21 months to prison, and I look at my attorney, and she doesn't say anything. Nobody says nothing. So I stand up, and and they tell me to sit down, like you can't talk. Federal court's totally different. And I look at my attorney, and all she says is, "Oh, Your Honor, can you recommend a camp? A camp." So in the federal system, there's camp. There's an FCI 1, an FCI 2, which is a low, a medium. And then there's the penitentiary, which is the USP, and then there's Supermax. So those are the levels of the federal system. A camp is usually where people go that, like Martha Stewart went to them.
Yeah.
Their money crimes.
Where, like, if you have money, you can play tennis and stuff, or
Well, it's just there's no gates. You can actually leave, but they have jobs outside. They're just super free, and they're usually anyway. So he goes, "Well, I recommend Camp Nellis." So I think I'm going to a camp. And go back. So I'm shocked. I'm going to prison for 21 months. To me, that's extremely long. I mean, the first time that sounds like forever, Go back, end up going.
Did your attorney tell you that you would probably do less than that, or?
Yeah, the plea agreement that I signed was for me to go to a halfway house for 6 months and do 12 months probation. That was what I agreed to when I pled guilty. A plea agreement is what you agree to, and then they
just threw it
went
out
completely against it. The judge said that because he wasn't part of that plea agreement, that it had no bearings. But nobody told me the judge had to be part of it.
Jesus.
So they okey-doked me. They straight got me to plead guilty, and because I didn't know enough about the system,
because your attorney didn't give a fuck.
They wanted me guilty because they lied to me.
Okay.
Got me to plead, so that I would never get to court. And then the judge sentenced me to prison. And then you can go through appeals, but appeals take, 10, 11 months, basically. And I didn't know anything about it. I know a lot about them now, but I didn't at the time.
Yeah.
Super naive about how the system worked. And so I ended up getting on Con Air, which is where the feds put you on.
So they told you that you're going to a camp.
Yeah, I think I'm going to a camp in Nellis, which was at the time Camp Nellis was down by Vegas. So they don't have any federal prisons in Utah. They're all over the country, but Utah doesn't have anything. They only hold temporarily in the jails, and so they put you on this flight, the Con Air they call it. And so they come in and put a bunch of inmates on the plane. They circle it with a bunch of guys with ARs. It's not quite like the movie Con Air, but kind of. But you get on this plane. First stop, we fly to Vegas, and it drops down, and they call people's names, and they get up, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting off here. I'm going to the camp, so they don't call my name. And so this marshal walks by, and I'm like, hey, I'm supposed to get off here. And he's like, what's your name? And I go, McFarland. And he looks on his paper, and he's like, nope, you're going to the pen. And I'm like, what? The pen's a USP. That's a max. So
Where's that at?
There's a bunch of them, but
which one were they taking?
I didn't know at the time. They don't tell you. So everybody goes to. They have these designation centers. So basically, I fly around and go to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma is the hub where everybody goes before you get designated to your prison. So I go to Oklahoma. I'm there.
So if you have federal charges, they said they can send you to any prison, any federal prison they want to.
Anywhere they want.
Okay.
So now they have a law, but at the time they didn't. Now that they try to keep you within 500 miles of your home. But this wasn't the case then, and this was 2004.
Okay.
So I go to Oklahoma, and I mean, I'm just shocked that they're saying that. I meet this counselor, and she's looking over my case, and she's like, "What? Why would you be going to the penitentiary?" And they were all shocked. It was my first felony ever. I mean, usually only the most violent, and I mean, it's the top.
Yeah.
So, this ended up staying there for like 3 weeks, and then they fly me out to Victorville, California, which was a brand new federal compound. So they have these They have so many people locked up in the feds, which people don't even know how many people are at.
Do you remember your first night in the pen?
Yeah, remember all of this.
What was that like?
So you go in, they take you in, they strip search you, do all that, make you x-ray your butt. Just, it's horribly degrading. You're just shocked the whole time. I'm shocked that I'm there. Get my bundle of stuff and end up going to it's called the SHU, which is a special housing unit. It's the hole that they make you stay there before you hit main yard or main line, they call it. Just so the prison now will designate you or check when you stay there till they realize where they're going to house you and what so it's kind of a pre-screening and check to see what gangs you're affiliated with or what type of problems you're going to be. Every prison does this on their own. So I'm in that for 3 weeks, and then I hit the main yard and walked out there and just mind blown. They give you your clothes, and I go to my section. I know nothing about being locked up. I know nothing about convicts. So
how old were you at this time? 30?
I was 33.
Okay.
33 or 34. Gotten pretty healthy through that 11 months. Probably put on weight, got strong, was working out. So I don't know. I hit the yard. So the interesting thing about the USP and Victorville especially, so this is a brand new prison. And federal prisons are ran by, basically the yard's ran by the inmates. And they call it politics, but it's basically segregation through race. So you stay with your people. The whites stay with the whites, the blacks, the natives, the Pisces or Hispanics, and Serenios, and then there's the Islanders, which are Japanese. Anyway, they call them the Islanders. So from wherever, Tongans and Cantonese, I don't know, all those guys. So they have their own car. So I don't know much about this.
Like Polynesians?
Yeah,
or
Polynesian.
Japanese people, because that's, I think, two different groups.
Yeah, not really, because they call the Japanese and the Polynesians. They are kind of I don't know. They're kind of the Tongans and the Polys are their own.
Okay.
And then Islanders.
Okay.
I don't know. I was not exactly sure.
Like Asians?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if the Chinese and Japanese, because China's not really an island.
Shit, they all look the same.
Yeah. So I don't know much about this, and I don't understand it. I don't care. At the time, I was super angry, hated everybody, pretty much wanted to die. I didn't care if I made it out. I didn't care.
Your life was over as you saw it.
As far as I was concerned, my life was over. I could no longer be a firefighter. I could no longer. I was a disgrace to everybody in my family. Everybody was super disappointed. I had no support. My life was done. I didn't have anything except for my daughter, basically, which she was like 3 at the time. Anyway, I try to fit in. I try to get in there. I don't really care to make friends. I don't understand their language. I don't understand anything about how they're ran. But they are ran. So there's 2 things that are interesting about the situation. One was this yard was brand new, and it wasn't set up yet because it just opened up that year. So the prison's brand new. So nobody has control of the yard yet. So every federal prison at one point, there's the shot callers and then there's people. And the problem with this prison at the time, it was new and everybody was fighting for control. So it was super bloody. At the time, it was the most violent prison in the country. The Victorville, they call it Victimville. So
how often did you see people get killed?
I think I seen 6 or 7 while I was there, but fights almost daily. And it was crazy because you just see obviously the people start fighting, and then you'd see there's little spots start showing up on people like when they're getting poked. They're getting stabbed, and it was real crazy to watch. And I didn't really understand this, so I ended up getting into it with a couple of Pisces or Hispanics, and I fought them. and pretty much I won, And at this point, I got contacted by Nazi lowriders or Nevada white gang or dirty, white boys. And they were like, well, first of all, you're never supposed to fight another race without having it approved by, because you're going to start a war. I didn't know this, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
And my attitude was I didn't care. And I'm lucky that at this time, I look back and what I know now about the system, I'm lucky that AB wasn't on the Yard Aryan Brotherhood, because
they would have killed you.
They would have killed me, or at least beat me to the point. So these guys came to me and they're like, look, we know you don't understand this. The guy's name was Bandit. He was a shot caller for Nazi lowriders. And he was like, well, you need to tip up with us. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know what that means, that tipping up's when you join a gang. You need to, let me kind of explain that. And I'm like, no, I'm Bandit. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to join your gang, Bandit. I just had no desire to have another man tell me what to do. I said, we already had this. And so pretty disrespectful to him. And he was like, well, we'll make you. And I'm like, whatever. So I knew they were coming for me. And didn't know when, but I was in my cell and kind of ready. I had all the stuff set up ready for a fight. We had these drawers. And
did you have a cellmate or were you by yourself? Yeah.
I did. I can't really, somebody they just kind of put me in with. I can't remember what his name was. I'd only been in there like 2 weeks. He was pretty quiet. That guy was pretty quiet. They just kind of put me with, so you have to live with white people. So this is different. You have to remember, I don't understand it at the time. I didn't know anything about politics in prison. I'd been a firefighter and not in the world. So basically I was doing nothing right. I already had about everybody against me because I was this weird dude that was super mad and didn't talk to anybody. So they ended up coming to my cell, like 6 of them. And
the white guys, the white supremacy guys.
Yeah, so they came in and started fighting. I hit I had this box, had all the stuff set up. I hit the first guy with the box and cut his head open. He went down and we started fighting. And the cells were small, so I had kind of an advantage because, I wasn't going to get out of there one way or the other. But I fought this next guy, and they just couldn't really get to me because it was such a small area. And they started beating me up, and I don't know, maybe a minute or two, and the next thing I know, the A team or the SWAT team came flying in behind and just started shooting us with those beanbags guns with a shotgun. I got hit twice, and that just takes every ounce of fight out of you. It's super. It was crazy. I thought I was dead. Like, oh, they killed me. And broke some ribs, drugged some. They started coming and dragging everybody out. So I went to the SHU, which is the hole. They call it the SHU because it's a special housing unit. So I went to the SHU. I got wrote up for fighting. I ended up doing 4 months in the SHU. And that was probably the hardest time of my entire life.
What was that like? What's the SHU like?
Hell.
Is it like a smaller cell or
no? It's a bigger cell because you have a shower in your cell. So this is a new prison. I've been in the older ones, but the new prison, so they have these little aluminum showers in there that are super small. That you hit this button and just will piss the ass, just like a drinking water fountain just comes out. That's for your shower, and your shitter's in there, and your sink, and then your bunks. I didn't have cellies that the whole time, so I was in there by myself.
So you never leave there, I guess, huh?
So they're legally, they can only give you 23 hours in there, and they're supposed to give you an hour of rec. So they take you out, they cuff you up and take you to.
So what's worse about the SHU? That you're in the cell the whole time, or?
Yeah. So you're in there, nothing. I didn't have my radio. So you can buy these little dollar radios on commissary, and you listen to the TV through them. They have the FM transmitters on the TV, and basically they're like $35. They just rape people. They're like the cheapest radios that you can buy. Well, they charge like $35, $40 for them. So I didn't have that, and they brought like first 2 or 3 weeks or more. I didn't have anything to read. You just sit there staring at the wall. And 3 times a day they come and just kick food through the slot. And,
So like in the movies, basically.
yeah, just like that. Have you seen that? What's that show we watched? That
I can't remember.
but so they
Shawshank Redemption.
no, that was a nice prison. He was old. It's much worse than that. So they take you out.
Cristo.
I think it's shock collar or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
So it's just like that. So
Okay.
basically, when they take you outside of those cages when they fought,
Yeah.
it's like that.
Where he's doing pull-ups and shit out there.
That's your rectum. So you can go out to that an hour a day, which it's. I mean, I didn't really want to. I didn't know. I went out a couple times, but at this time, I think that everyone's going to kill me, and I kind of wanted that, but I wasn't going to make it easy by going out there to the wreck or to be put in a cage with another gang member that I didn't know who was what. So I didn't really go out much. I went out a few times, but by far the hardest 4 months of my life to sit in that cell every day, look at the wall, nothing. Because I started reading a lot. I learned to read, not learn to read, but I learned that by reading I could mentally get out. I learned that during the 11 months that I was locked up in the county, which what got me through all the time that I did was I read everything. Even whatever, anything to get your mind out of just sitting there staring at the wall. So I did the 4 months. I got out, and basically when I hit the yard again, everybody was just like, basically just leave that crazy fucker alone. You know what I mean? Nobody talked to me, no whites, nobody. I didn't have any friends. I didn't want any friends. So I spent the rest of my time alone there, which was fine.
And how long did you end up spending there?
I was there 19 months when I was there first time. From then I went to a halfway house. But so I basically started working out, just kind of reading my books.
Do you get drugs and
There are.
prison?
There are. So that was the Victorville was the first federal prison to go tobacco free, which was crazy. I was pissed. I thought, well, I can at least smoke when I get to prison, because that was the big thing about the feds. You could still smoke at the time. Well, in 2005, they passed a law that no longer tobacco would be sold in any of them. And that was the first one. So you could buy drugs. There was heroin, and I seen it there. So I seen people. So they make these syringes out of Bic pens. They'll get a diabetic to get a syringe, and they'll get the tip off of it, and they'll take a clear Bic pen, and they'll put one of those, those grips that are on the pens, those grippers.
Yeah.
And they'll take one of those and put it on the end, tie it off the outside, and melt the point into the tip of the plastic, and they'll make a syringe out of it. So the bubblers actually will suck up the stuff, and then they use it to shoot up. Super inventive. I learned a lot of crazy stuff that criminals are super good at, like all kinds of interesting things. I watch people make tattoo guns out of pretty much nothing, like really interesting things. Like they're really inventive. So anyway, basically I spent the rest of that time by myself, got out in 2006, went to the halfway house. That was amazing. To walk out of those gates, people will never know how amazing that feels to walk out after that day that you come from. So when you're locked up, basically every day seems like a week, but every week seems like a month. So time just moves so slow. And you anticipate and wait for this day that they give you. So got out on federal parole. I think I started using. I got out, tried to. So they say, let me go back to that. They say the federal system and all the criminal justice system is so fucked up for addicts because they don't help you. They say that there's classes and treatment and college and you can get degrees. Well, all that's horseshit. There's none of that. Like only for the guys that have been there 30 years can get into those classes. The ones that are never getting out, But there's no college. There's no courses. You can't get a trade. They tell everybody this. Like you read the federal handbook, and it says that all these things that you can do at these different prisons.
It's a lot easier for people outside of it to not turn a blind eye to the fact that humans are being treated like animals. It's a lot easier.
Exactly, because they say, well, they can go to college in this life, and none of that's true.
Yeah.
They,
I mean, there's a reason that our system doesn't actually rehabilitate people.
No, they don't rehabilitate because it's about money. So the federal inmates, when they're staying in the county jail, the jail gets $375 a day to house that federal inmate. It's all about money. That's why you see all these private prisons, these CCAs coming up, and they're all, a lot of them back east. We don't have a whole bunch of them out west. There's one in Vegas, but these private prisons now, because it's a money thing. So they basically, that's why they haven't released everybody that's federally on weed charges, because they're getting paid for them. I mean, that's one of the most amazing and shittiest things ever, is there's thousands and thousands of people in the federal system on weed charges when it's now a legal thing, and they're still locked up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's super crazy. So I get out, get a job. I have a ton of skills. Started running, just doing construction, and get a foreman. And I start using it again because, I mean, I didn't have any reason not to. And basically make it for, let's see, I got a 6. I did pretty good. I mean, the feds leave kind of alone. I did like 2 years, and then ended up moving up to Bear Lake, living up there, building cabins. Got a girlfriend up in Montana, and I went up to see her. I'd been on probation for like 2.5 years. Somehow my PO just, I don't know why, I didn't take any. I was supposed to take drug tests and lots of things. Well, the first PO that I had was about to retire and didn't really care. So he just kind of let me do whatever. He looked at my case and was shocked. He was like, what? He was shocked that I locked up. He was shocked at my charge. And then he was shocked that I went to a USP. He was just like, I don't know what the fuck this is. I remember in that meeting, I'm like, well, yeah, I was shocked too. So he basically didn't do anything. And so I kind of did what I wanted for like 2 years. And then I got a new PO because he retired, and this guy was up my ass. So I moved up to Bear Lake, started doing construction and building up there. Pretty easy at that time, I thought. But he finally violated me. I think I only had 6 months left, so I went back into Davis County Jail for 6 months.
Because of failing a drug test?
No, he said basically they pulled me over up in Montana, and they just called in everybody. I didn't even know I had a federal warrant. I didn't know. He never called and told me that he was violating me and putting a warrant out for me. He didn't give me any idea. He just put it out.
Okay.
So I got pulled over, and they just went ape shit. Tell us about the feds, and every cop in the town came, and I had a little empty baggie of meth on me at the time, and so that was bad. So then they extradited me from Montana back to here, which I went through a whole bunch of different jails and ended up going to from Helena to Great Falls. And then Great Falls, they flew me to SeaTac. SeaTac, they flew me to Oklahoma, and then finally back to Salt Lake. That's how the feds work. They call it, they put you in. And then
you just spent a little bit of time in each, or what?
Yeah. So basically, I've been in 32 jails totally, but a lot of them were through transport. Like I've been extradited twice this time, and then when I got extradited out of North Dakota. So they just put you from county to county to county to get you where you're at. And so then because I had to come back to my original sentencing judge for my violation. So I had to come back to Utah. So I got back here. He gave me, it was only 6 months left on my probation. He locked me up for that and terminated it. So when I got out of the 6 months, then I was done. Did that, got out, I think that was 2008, and it was in the beginning of 2008. So I got out in like September, started working, did okay, basically till 2011, and then, but that's when I started getting into the drug world. So now I'd met all these people in the drug world. I'd been in Weaver County, so I knew everybody in Ogden through my jail time there. And you meet connections, and now I know how the whole system works, and basically to get out, and had a lot of clout for actually going to a USP. Once you go to a USP, that's it gives you a lot of street credibility for some dumb reason. They think that oh man, he'd been in the pen, you know. So I get out to start learning about Ogden. I'd also, I'd met some people when I was up at Bear Lake. I just started learning about the drug world and meeting people through being locked up. And that's why it was easier to start. I could get drugs easier now. I learned how to do all kinds of things. Basically stayed out from, let's see, I got a charge in 2010 for this girl was doing a bunch of car burglaries and stole some guy's checkbook, left it in my car. I was staying in a hotel in Ogden, and they came for a warrant for the girl that I was with. Arrested both of us, found that checkbook that girl left in my truck, and they gave me another felony for
fraud
for forgery. Yeah, even though it wasn't me. So then basically the judge sentenced me to prison on that. So I got a year, 0 to 5 in the state, and I went out to Draper for a year. And this was a whole different experience. Like Draper compared to the feds,
Draper's a state prison?
Yeah. So Utah has only the jails and the state prison, you know. And then it's for the state, the size of the state. That's why they're building the new prison now. It was so totally different than the feds. And I got out there and didn't know nothing about it. But I'd been in the pen, so I automatically, you know, people showed some respect for where you'd been. So it was super dumb. But I never joined any gangs, but didn't have any problems with them for when I went to the state.
So was Draper quite a bit easier to live in than the feds?
It was different. So the food was worse, much worse. The feds, they feed you pretty good. But the Draper, they only spend. I learned this when I was working in the kitchen in one of the jails. When these companies come and bid these contracts to feed the county jail, it's a commissary and the food. They run the kitchen. They bid the trays at 11 to 13 cents a tray. That's what they spend. And that's how much you get. I mean, basically.
So for a meal, they're paying 11 cents. But they're charging $350 a day.
Well, that's what the jail's getting from the feds and from the state. So they get grants. So they're getting money for every inmate. They get a bunch of money from the government. So they're locking up everybody they can so they can say, and they're saying, oh, we need this for rehabilitation for RDAP, which is a drug program. They try to push you into these drug programs, which are super dumb. They don't help, but they get money if they get you to get into it. So they get money. The state ran differently than the feds, but they get federal money. So the state gets federal money for all the men. So they have probably, I would say, 80% of the people that are in the state in Draper are addicts, are on drug charges, which are super stupid because it's not helping any of them. So I went out there for this forgery, did a year out there, and I was starving the entire time. I didn't have any support from my family or from anybody because I wasn't doing good, and I'd kind of stayed away from them, you know. I had no money, basically starved. I was hungry the entire time I was there. Learned about that.
Did you lose a bunch of weight?
Yeah. I put on quite a bit when in the feds, and when I got there. I mean, I was already pretty sucked up from using while I was on the streets, and then when I when I went to the prison out there, it just got worse. So I did a year on that, terminated that charge. It was just a 0 to 5. The state has 3 different felonies. They got a felony 1, 2, or 3. It's a 0 to 5, a 1 to 15, and a 5 to life. Those are the only charges that the state has as far as felonies go. So a 0 to 5 means that you can do up to no time to 5 years on that offense, and they can, and including your paper or your probation.
Okay.
A 1 to 15, you can do a minimal of a year because it's a 1. You're going to do at least a year, up to 15 years, and they can leave you on probation for 15 years. And a 5 to life, same thing. You'll do automatic 5, which is or to life. So those are the differences in that. And the feds just do it. They have a chart that they do your violence, your criminal history, your offense, and then it's a super complicated. And then but they give you more time. You do a lot more time in the feds. They hand out 10-year sentences for drug people all the time. It's crazy the amount of time that the feds give out. So I know at this point I learned a little bit about the system and how it works. So that year
was around 2012, you said?
Yeah, 2010. Okay. I got out in 2011 and got out in June, and I made it I don't know, not even 2-3 months. It was 30 days. And I got pulled over in Ogden and had a pipe. This was my legitimate first drug charge. This was the first time I ever got an actual possession. And I got pulled over leaving this house. And
but you said you had meth the time before.
Yeah, but I didn't. It was an empty baggie, so it was actually and that was just a probation. That wasn't a charge. So they just violated They put it on as a tech, but it was just a possession of paraphernalia because there was nothing in it. So, and that was just a tech. But so this time they actually found a pipe, and all these cops came out there. It was in West Ogden. I'll never forget it. I was sitting there, and the funny thing about Utah, so they have this law that if you're within 1,000 feet of a church or a school or something else, they can enhance your charges because of public safety, right? And
there's schools and churches everywhere.
So we're in Utah where you're not 1,000 feet from the church, right? So I'm standing there cuffed up on the curb, and all these cops are talking, going through my truck, and they look over, and one cop goes, "Oh, isn't that?" And there's a church 3 blocks away, and they go, "Oh, isn't that 1,000 feet?" "Oh, yeah," and they all laugh. And it's 3 blocks. You know what I mean? You can barely see the steeple. So they enhance my possession from a 0 to 5 to a 1 to 15, just like that, because they lie, right? So I go to jail and end up back in Weaver County, just super, super depressed, and once again, I'm already back in.
What was your sentence?
It was a possession. So they gave me a possession and a DUI, and this is crazy. So I'd had my CDL for years, and kind of going back on that. Well, they gave me a DUI, which they ended up dropping because I wasn't really DUI at the time. It was early in the morning, but they just put it out there. So, but the possession stuck. So they gave me a 1 to 15 felony 2 possession because they said I was within 1,000 feet of a church, which was a lie, but stuck.
So how long did you actually get sentenced for?
So the state's different. So at the time, so went to the judge, went to my arraignment, and he gives me drug court. Okay, so I finally kind of get a break, so I get out and get drug court. So drug court works basically if you complete drug court, which is a year program, then they do a plea in abeyance with your charge. So I'm like, all right, seeing how it could be a second degree, which is going to be at least a year.
So you got out?
Yep. So I get out.
Okay.
And you're on a plea in abeyance. Basically, you have to complete drug court. So drug court, you go to classes 3 nights a week. You do UAs, urine, drug tests at least to start off 3 times a week. And then you go back into court every Tuesday at 2:00 and talk to the judge. So basically your whole life. So I'm doing construction, and there's no one in the world that's going to let you leave at 4:00 to make it to this class, and then say you got a UA that you have to go to. You have to be there by 5, and then every Tuesday at 2:00 you have to go into court. So basically, I'm just like, well, how am I supposed to make money? I mean, I didn't.
So what? You just didn't do it?
No, I did it. You have to do it. You have to do that, or they lock you up. So
Right.
So I did it, and I made it. I did really good the first 6 months. I started to get some counseling in Bountiful from this is when my family kind of got involved and helped me get into a treatment center in Bountiful, adult addiction treatment, which was really helpful. I got a counselor. This was the first time I'd ever had any real help, and it was really good. This guy named Dave Miller was an amazing counselor. Helped me. I was doing that and drug court. I'd see him like once a week, and had a doctor there that put me on some meds. Not at the time. I started using heroin. I guess I started using heroin at the time when I got out in 2000, not 2010. Really like mildly, but started. That's when heroin started being bigger and bigger. In 2008 and 9, it was about everywhere, and I started using that also with meth. So, went to this private place in Bountiful, and I was doing drug court. Made it about 10 months, and I started drinking, and because I figured out that I could drink the night before the UAs, and as long as it was 12 hours, that it would be fine out. They had this new alcohol test called an ETA.
Were you not supposed to be drinking at all?
No. But they did. It was hard to test for at the time. They didn't have this test called the ETG, which they would. It was super expensive, so they wouldn't use it unless they had suspicion. And somebody ended up telling on me in one of my classes because of a bunch of drama, and I started doing the ETG test, and basically all of my failures or my sanctions were alcohol. And they give you like 4. The first one you do 2 days in jail, then 4 days in jail, then 2 weeks in jail, and then basically they kick you out of drug court. So I'd made it 10 months. Thought I was doing pretty well. I hadn't used any dope, but I was drinking. And then the last test, I knew I was going to fail, and I had this rigging system rigged up that I could actually go in and do this fake drug test where they have like an IV line on my butt, up on my dick, I had this fake piss, and I'd done it a couple times, and so I got in there trying to do it, and the thing all malfunctioned. Piss was running down my back, and the guy was sitting there looking at me. So
whose pee was it?
It was a kid I worked with. He met me. The things that you'll do, like the thing that we did to get out of these tests was, there's like fake dicks, there's all kinds of stuff. There's synthetic pee. But anyway, it was horrible. I had it all taped up. I did it all, thought I had it all figured out. Standing, couldn't get it to work forever. And it squeezing the bag into my arm, and it breaks and running down. I'm like, oh, God. So I pissed in there. So then I realized I'm done. So I leave there, call my buddy, and I said, look, we got to go. So I took off, went to North Dakota. Didn't know nobody, not a soul. Jumped in the truck.
Because you weren't going back to prison.
Well, so I wasn't going back to prison because I wasn't going back broke. So I had no money, and I wasn't going to go back there hungry because there was just no way I was going to go back to the state and go through what I went through before without some money.
Okay.
And so I was going to be sentenced on a 1 to 15, which was going to be, I knew at least 2 years, on a 1 to 15. So I went to North Dakota, lived with my buddy, Corey Smith. Bless your heart, Corey. So we'll punch it in your face. Hope you listen. So we go up there, and we're living in a tent he was using at the time. I was clean, and get up there and get a job with this construction company doing concrete. Didn't know nobody, didn't know where we were going, just drove up there and found a camping spot in Sydney. in Sydney, North Dakota. We stayed in Minot for a night in a hotel, and then we heard the oil field was further up, and they called it the Bakken, up in the northwest corner of the state. So we went up, found this town that had, and this was July, so it was super hot. We pitched a tent, got 4 days. We're driving around looking. We don't know, we just thought, we just heard there's so much work up there. You can just pull in there and people hire you. Just go to the gas station. Well, that wasn't the case. It was like North Dakota was super hard to figure out. So we ended up getting this job at this construction company as an operator, and he did concrete. Well, Corey made it about 3 days, and it was like 100 degrees, and he took off, walked off the job site, went back to our camp, got in his truck, and left. So I got a ride back there, and my stuff was all thrown in the tent, and he's gone. He had the vehicle, and I had a cricket phone that they told me, so I don't have a phone, I don't have a vehicle, and he's left. He went home. He just left me up there. So there's this other guy that pulls in while I was gone, and he was from Ogden. He was in the camp next to me, and he tells me that Corey had left, and he was looking for a job. So I said, look, I'll give you a job I'll help you get a job if you'll take me to work, So I ended up working for like a month, just staying in this tent, and going to work, just trying to get some money, got my first check, and rode a bus back home, got my car, and drove back up, because I was like, I was going to make it work no matter what. Like I didn't have an option.
You were on the run.
I'm on the run. I'm staying super low. The thing about North Dakota is they don't extradite. So they told us, I heard that. So they don't extradite. So I was up there. I finally got my car back up there, lived in the tent for like 2 months. And then I got into this man camp, which was not really, it was a semi-trailer that had 8 little doors on it. It was a 53-foot trailer that they divided into 8 little rooms. And you went in, it had a little RV door on it. You went in, there was a bed, and then there's the bed from the next room was like covered, but it was just like right next to you. So the guy sleep in the room next to you, above you or below you. And there's no running water, and it was like $900 to have this. And they would just flatten out fields. At the time, North Dakota was booming, like
all the oil,
like it was huge. Like gas was like $4.30 a gallon at the time, super crazy. And so I just buckled down and just started working. And I stayed with that company way longer than I should have, that just operating, doing concrete. It wasn't really an oil job, so I wasn't making great money, but kind of saving up. Then finally I got, I did that till, I don't know, I came home for Christmas and went to Chase's wedding, and then I flew right back and didn't have a job. They laid me off in the winter, so I got back up there and finally got on the pipeline on an oil job as an operator. Started making great money. So I was making, about $4,000 a week, and had a couple of really good friends that I'd met on the job doing the pipelines. And we moved into this. That company that I worked for had this trailer that was kind of their house, their recreation house down on Lake Sacagawea or something, but it was on the Indian reservation. And but they didn't use it, so they rented it to us. So everybody kind of lived in fifth wheels and trailers. These man camps. These farmers would just knock down these fields, lay out power and water, and you'd bring your RV and park it, and they'd charge you like $1,000 a month, and they'd have like 100 trailers in these fields. And so they just quit farming.
Everybody was making money.
Yeah, and so even McDonald at the time, the male to female ratio in North Dakota was like 25-1. So there was like no women up there. It was super crazy to be in a world other than prison where there wasn't any feminine touch. North Dakota was like that. I remember coming back home and going into the houses and just like everything, just the way that that women add to our lives that we don't really recognize, because up there, everything's just a solid man world, like mud rooms, boots, no deck, no nothing, different. So anyway, I went back up there, got that house, and just bunkled down and just did did oil line, kind of was happy. I didn't use it all when I was there. I drank a lot, but I didn't use any drugs, so I stayed clean. And that was kind of my goal. I was like, look, I'm done. I'm just going to work, and that's not been good. So that was probably the longest that I stayed clean on any substance as far as meth or heroin or nothing. I didn't use it all for that year and a half that I was up there. And then I had a girl move up there with me, and she kind of stayed there was like 5 of us operators staying in this trailer house, and she kind of moved up there, and I met her in drug court. Came up there and made her lunches, and we all paid her to do her laundry, and she was super happy. But I really didn't like her that much, but it was, to have anyone.
Someone.
Yeah, it was someone. She was super in love with me, and so she came up there, but it was all right. It was better than nothing, but she was cool, super cool. And I got a truck. I bought that F-250, that Power Stroke, so they would pay you as an operator. They'd pay you your wage, which is about $30 an hour, and then they'd pay you a per diem, which was, if you didn't live in a man camp that they provided, it was $125 a day, and then they would pay you for your truck, which was $70 a day with your fuel tank, because you could take fuel to your machine. So they give you a gas card, and you would basically fill up every morning and take gas and grease your machine and fuel it, and they paid you for your truck. So I had to get a truck with a fuel tank, so I bought a Power Stroke. I really loved it. 95, my dad brought up to me, and everything was good. My life was going good. I was clean, but
you couldn't come back to Utah.
Yeah, couldn't come back home until I had warrants. I had federal warrants or felony warrants for me. So I got pulled over before that once. Got a DUI for my meds. The cop was doing 6 over. The cop pulled me over, took me to jail, but he told me, he's like, well, you got warrants out of Utah, but we don't extradite, so you're fine. So I actually got pulled over, went to jail. My buddies bailed me out, got out. And I was like, grateful that I was there. I was like, oh, I'm done. But basically told me you don't extradite. So then 7 months later, I was with that girl, and we went into town one day, into Newtown. So in Newtown, they had a casino, and it was just a shithole of a town. Like, it was a reservation, and people don't know how shitty those reservations are and how much they hate us. They hate us bad. Like, you can feel the hate everywhere you go. Those reservations, it's crazy. That show Yellowstone portrays it pretty well. They've done a pretty good job in that. And so that Wind River, that's really how it is. Mm-hmm. They get a ton of money from their oil reserves. I don't know where they spend it, but anyway. So then I go to town with her. I bought her this Blazer, one of those newer Chevy Tahoes. I bought her a Tahoe from one of my buddies so she could run around in it. I put new brakes on it. She was like, I'd been working 12 hours, and she comes out and she's like, oh, I want to learn how to do the brakes. And I'm like, sweetie, I'm tired. I just want to put them on. So then we were driving into town to go to like All a Dollar, and she's like, I don't know why you yelled at me. And I'm like, I didn't yell at you. I said, look, I was tired. I go, this is what it sounds like. If I get yelled at like this, we're going to get loud and start yelling. Just teasing her, kind of, Well, this cop hears me like 2 blocks away, and he pulls us over thinking that I'm having a domestic issue. So when he writes me a driving on, pulls and separates us, and she's like, no, he's always super sweet to me. We were just kidding. He was just, it wasn't like that. But he writes me a driving on suspension, lets me go. And
because you didn't have a driver's license?
Yeah, I didn't have a license.
Okay.
And I should have just paid that ticket. So I waited like a month. Actually, then I went into the court to take care of it. Like, the date came up. I think it was like $1,000 for it. If I would have just paid it. So I go into the court, and she went with me, and I'm sitting there, and I got there like first, and I'm waiting for my time to talk to the judge, and I'm like, this isn't right. Something's not right. Finally, I get up, and the judge is super douchey, and she like lays me out, and then I'm starting to walk away, and then the cop that wrote me the ticket was there, and he walks up. He's like, Bart, look. He said, I'm sorry, we're taking you into custody. Utah wants you really bad.
Holy
So
shit.
they ended up arresting me there. And my trial, everything. Luckily, she took all my stuff. They put me in jail. And then they extradite me back. It takes me about 3 months to get back. This is why I've been in so many jails. So they take me from one jail to the next jail to the next jail. It took them like 2 months maybe to get me back.
They just have to kind of line up when they have transport going.
Yeah, we're not. They'll just have like one sheriff that's saying he's going to take an inmate to the next county, and they'll just throw you in there and take you to the next county, and they'll stay there. Get all the way back to. They got all the way back to Utah, and we didn't really talk about the fight that I had when I lost my ear that happened before that. So
The first time you were in Utah? The first time you were in Utah?
No, it happened. It happened in 2011 when I was in Weber County. So I get back to Idaho, and Weber County comes up and picked me up in my lab, and there was a transport cop that I knew, and there was this new cop that I didn't know that they came to pick me up, and they were like, I'd put on a bunch of weight, and I think the transport cop's name was Ross, or he was like, McFarland, what's up? He's like, you look healthy. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, a little heavier now. I've been, usually pretty sucked up when they arrested me before. And the other cop's like, he's like, I've seen all your fights. I'm like, what? He's like, oh, yeah, they use all your fights for the training videos at Weber County. I'm just like, well, there is that.
Wow.
It was kind of funny. It's like, so I go back there, ended up that went to court. The judge gave me 20. Well, the judge just sent me back to prison. So Utah works differently. Like the judge just either sentenced you to prison or not. So once you go to prison, then the board of prison, there's a board of, the board of prison actually decides how long you're there. So you're there 6 months, and then you go see the board, and then they figure out your sentence, how long you'll stay. It's not up to the judge at all. It's only up to the board of pardon or board of something, I can't remember. But they sentenced me to prison. Obviously, because I failed drug court and I went on the run, he just like automatically going to prison. So I went back, and I ended up doing 26 months on that. I got out, and that wasn't that bad because I had money. I'd stacked up a bunch of money when I was in North Dakota, so I could have a lot of commissary.
But you were in Draper at that for 26 months?
Yeah, I went back to Draper. So so they put me in a drug program called Conquest out there, where you're in a 50-man dorm. It wasn't bad. It was better. I had a little TV on the end of my bed that you can only get air channels, but it was better. And I had commissary, and that's when I started getting. So I got back into this. This time I started saying, "Look, I got to figure something out." So I started reading more about the church and trying to learn a lot about the history. I'd always read a lot, but I just read constantly. That's all I did when I was locked up, and But I had it pretty good. Like I had a really good reputation at that time. So I wasn't in any gangs, but nobody fucked with me. And like all there's two white gangs in Utah. There's Sack and Saw, Soldiers of Aryan Culture and Soldiers Aryan Warriors or something. But those are the big gangs out there. And then there's Tongan Crips. And the Crips in the blood, of course, but there's not a lot. But it's a different situation than the Feds. The Feds is serious. Like this politics is serious. Out here, it's like it was just like going to like a preschool compared to what I'd been to in the Feds. So I did that. Got out in 2015. Got a job pretty quick. Came out, did really well for a while. Didn't use, but I drank. I started drinking after a while. Been out about 2 years. Got a girlfriend. Got back involved with my family. Tried to do really good. And this is where I started building a relationship with my daughter. I wrote her all the time, but I hadn't really seen her. It wasn't much of a part of her life. So then I started writing her when I was there in Conquest every week, and started building a relationship. I got out and started spending time with her. Brenda, my ex-wife, let me start seeing her and started building a relationship with her, which was really good. everything was good, but I was drinking. And definitely an alcoholic. Definitely, and I drank the same way that I drank when I was in North Dakota. I got out, and it was a lot. I mean, I make it to work every day, and I was like, "Oh, I'm doing good. I'm sober," but ended up doing great for a year. Had a great job. Was a foreman for, I think it was Nick's Construction at the time. It was around my family. Things were good, and then I got coming back from Pine View. I got a DUI. In August, like after a year. That's when they realized what I was driving. And once they realized what I was driving, there's still all these cops that hated me. They hated me. Then 2 months later, I got another DUI. And then 2 months later, on Christmas Eve, I got another DUI. So I got 3 DUIs in 6 months. And at that point, everybody was really frustrated. My daughter was mad. I missed Christmas, so I started using meth again just because I was like, well, it's not going to work. So I switched, went to meth, moved to Salt Lake, made it another year. But at the time, then I kind of withdrew from my family. I still did my daddy date nights once a week with my daughter, but she could tell that things weren't right, but I still made sure I made that. I tried to keep that relationship and build it, but I was struggling with my addictions at that point. Made it work. Did good till Thanksgiving, another year. And had a girlfriend that was horrible for me. She was an addict. I was using meth and heroin consistently at this point. This was probably when I got it deepest, and moved out to West Valley, had a house out there with a bunch of people that were using. It was just a horrible environment, but I still went to work every day. Did that till then I tried to come back. Sierra was like, I want you to come back closer to home. I'm like, look, if I come back, they're going to arrest me. And so I moved back to Kaysville, and hadn't even been back here a day. And I was taking my truck and the trailer back to go get more of my stuff, and they pulled me over in Kaysville on the on-ramp, and they just went ape shit. And they pulled me over. They were looking for me. I mean, anyway, so that girl was with me, and she got out, and then she was acting like the victim, and so I got a possession charge then. They got my bag. I ended up getting the possession of meth, heroin. And this time, I just want to be done. I mean, I'm super done. Like, can't win. Can't, I was fighting. I couldn't, I was so deep into everything. And that time when I went in, it was horrible. So I'm coming off of heroin, and I wanted to die.
Now you're back in, so they sent you back to Draper?
No, not yet. They just put me in
jail.
So I'm in Davis County, and just hell. So the jail's the hardest time. The jails are made for short term time. You're in a section. It's just super hell. So this is where you're going through, recognizing you look at, you're sober. I mean, when you're out, when you're using, you don't care about nothing. Your emotions are numb. Like, so now you got to go through everything. You're sober. You're miserable. Your body hurts. You realize you're fucked again. Horrible. I mean, this is where we've got to change something with addicts. Like, locking them up does nothing. And so at this time, I actually wanted to die here again. Like this was the beginning of 2017, and I did 4 months in the county on these charges. Got out, didn't have nothing. Didn't have my vehicle, didn't have its fucking thing. Well, I got a trailer in Kaysville, and this is when I started printing money. I learned how to counterfeit money. You learn how to do everything in prison. Like, it's nothing but a college for criminals. So I learned how to print, to wash bills, and reprint, turn a 1 or a 5 into a 50 or 100. So I started doing this just because I was flat broke, and I didn't have a vehicle, I didn't have a license. So I started making money. I bought a car, a truck, I got a trailer house, so I just started shopping and buying stuff. I was kind of hustling. And I made it about 4 months, and then I was up in Wyoming and I got caught. That's a pretty funny story, but I don't have time to go over all that. So they caught me in a Staples. I ended up spending this money and put it on a net spend card, and then they called the cops. So they found me and took me to jail, and I had all this fake money on me. I just printed like a whole bunch of money in my hotel room and stuck it in my boot. Well, they ended up finding that. So then I had drugs. So I got federally charged again with counterfeiting and possession. And I'm in Wyoming. So this point, this I really did. So this legitimately I earned. I earned that charge 100%. Like that's not one that I knew I had coming, but I was to the point where nothing was work. I was tired of trying to make things work, and so I did 3 years in the feds. They actually sent me to a medium this time, which was totally different. I went out to Oregon, Sheridan, Oregon, to a medium, which was so much different than the pen. Like it wasn't bad. I spent basically 3 years just reading. I had good radio. I had money, of course, because I had stashed a bunch of money, and it was all right. My family was helping me a little bit too. Got out, went to Wyoming, started working out there. At this time, I got out and I was done. So this was about 2019. I got an oil field job out in Wyoming, and just started busting my ass and working. So, but at this point, I just had 3 years and I'm done. I'm done with drugs, and I relapsed once. I ended up getting in the truck with my boss, and he had a pipe, and I hit it, and super dumb because I knew that I was going to have a test, and ended up getting. This was the last time I used. This was a couple of years ago.
This was after you'd just spent 3 years?
Yeah. So I got out of this day. I got out of the halfway house. I'd been doing this job for, 2 months in the halfway house. And got real close with my boss, our superintendent. And the day I get out of the halfway house, I moved into a hotel. Pretty happy. I'm out of the halfway house, and hadn't really met my PO yet. And that's what was dumb about it. This is when I realized it. So I get in the truck, and he's got a pipe, and he hands it to me, and I hit it. And I realized right then how powerless I was to this, like how dumb that this was. I look back on this, and I used that one, like I didn't even think about the consequences of this, of how powerless I was to this drug. I hadn't met my PO yet. I knew I was going to have to take a drug test within a couple of days, and that didn't even take the time to think about that. So I ended up meeting my PO 3 days later, got it dirty. That was the last time I touched it. He let me work. He said I had to go into an inpatient treatment center, but I worked for like 2 months before I couldn't get into the treatment center for a few months. So I worked up there at a power plant, just running a crew, doing excavating and hauling, and then ended up going to the VOA. It's Volunteers of America. It's a treatment center in Sheridan. It was amazing. So this is the second time I got real help. Once was with the counselor, but this treatment place, I was already done. Like at this point, I realized that how much that one use, how powerless I was to this drug. And so I was done, but that place was great. I was up there for 2 months. The food was great. Like they were actually give you treatment. They got great counselors. Like they have nice rooms. Like that's where addicts should go. That's what addicts need. They don't need to be stuck in a cell. They need that. They need to be helped. They need to be in classes. They need to be with good therapists. The problem with the ones that they have in the prison is they give them like 75 inmates to manage these counselors. And there's no way that you can help that many people. And they're super calloused. So that place was great. They would recommend it to anybody with an addiction problem, to Volunteers of America. It helped. I was already done. Like mentally, I'd made this choice. I'm done. But that kind of locked everything in. And then I was there. It was a little over a year and a half, about a year. I came back last December. So my dad died, and I came home and spent the last year here. I had an amazing year. Been with my family. Had no desire to use anything at all. So it's been a great year. Like I've got some on medication. I got on Suboxone, which has been super helpful. I have no cravings. I started drinking for a little while, got kind of into that. And then I realized that Jay's kind of helped me. He's like, look, you need to check yourself, and realized that I was starting to go down that path. So like I think I'll always have these struggles, but I'm in a good place. So that's basically my story.
Good.
Whole lot of bad fucking decisions.
Yeah, a whole lot of
lessons along the way.
Lessons like I've
You're
learned.
giving me anxiety about prison, dude.
Yeah.
Like just walking in,
Yeah,
it freaks you out, right? Because
it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's a horrible environment, and then they don't help. Like,
yeah,
the problem that the prisons have, like when you guys talked about should we legalize drugs, you talked about it on your podcast, and even as an addict, I think 100% you should let people make those choices, because they're gonna figure out. They're never gonna stop the problem. They're never helped. They've been fighting it since the 80s, and it hasn't gotten any better. All they do is turn away into making the addict's life worse. If it was legal, and it's gonna either ruin their life or they're gonna stop, but they're never going to make a person stop.
Yeah.
No, you're not. Nothing is going to do that. Like that decision has to be on their own, and it has to be something they make. Like, even after being locked up and you get out, you just go right back to it. Like that's something you have to realize, and not because you don't want to. Because when you're using it, you don't have the consequences. Oh, I'm going to go to prison. Like that doesn't even factor in. Like it's not helpful. I should definitely legalize it and let people figure that out for themselves. They're not helping, and all they're doing is making money on it. And then the people are getting out with the exact same problem they had when they got arrested, with no help. They need to be. If they want to spend that money, they need to put them in treatment centers where they actually can go outside or be in a healthy environment.
Yeah, well, we know the government doesn't do things efficiently or productively at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So how good has this year been?
This year's been great.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Huh?
Yeah, I've had an amazing year. Like being sober, being with my family. I work with. I started working up on Keaton's house. I loved that. I loved being part of that. Then I started working with Chase at the dealership. I love working with my nephews. I love just where I'm at. I love being this close. My daughter got married this year to a great guy, and super lucky that with that I get to be close to them, and just had a great year. I went on vacations, and I made more money this year than I probably ever made, and doing something I love. I'm just happy.
So it sounds like you're super lucky.
Yeah, I'm super
Right?
lucky, super blessed.
Because you could be dead, you could be in prison, you could
definitely be dead. I should have been dead.
should have been dead, should be in prison.
I don't know if I should be in prison. Well, they kept me long enough.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely should have been dead. But I mean, like I got just getting out of the first one was I was shocked that I got out of the pen alive for how I acted. When I look back at it now, and I was like, whoa. Like I said, if AB would have been in that yard, they would have killed me. And those guys, it just wasn't really set up yet. But
Okay, so I have two questions. First question, what would your advice be to someone that's going into prison right now? Someone that's never been, doesn't know what prison's going to be like.
man, pay attention. I don't know. I mean, the best thing for me was reading. So to me, you want to get out of it, I would say get into books, something, either working out. A lot of people worked out, got super healthy. Like you have to find something in your head. I've been meditating now, and I've gotten more in spiritual sides of like my own journey, but it was hard to do that while I was so angry and bitter and had all that anxiety. So for somebody going in now, there's almost nothing that can prepare you for. Don't join a gang if you're young, especially the young kids. The first thing I would tell them not to join a gang, because by joining a gang, they use those young kids so they'll get them and they'll think they'll bring them into protection, and then they'll have them go do a bunch of dangerous stuff. Like they call them torpedoes. They'll send them out to either stab somebody or beat somebody up, and then these kids
end up getting a lot more time.
sentences, and they just use them, and then they go, oh, you got to be a soldier, but the gangs are the worst thing like that you can do. Like, just stand up for yourself, just stay by yourself, and find some safe guys or some safe friends, but not a gang. Don't get affiliated, because it's the worst thing that you can do for somebody. Basically just like I got into books. That was my thing. I never read before. I don't really read now, but I read a ton of books, and I love that because I mentally got out. And once you get in the system, it's really hard to get out.
Okay, so second question to wrap up your whole story. What advice would you give to someone that is in the middle of an addiction right now? And maybe feels hopeless, and because you know how it feels.
I do. I've been there 1,000 times. Like, there's hope. Like, you just have to realize that hopefully that they can find something to get some help, and realize that cycle's never going to end until you make that decision. And that decision, like, addiction's a horrible disease. But I mean, you talked about it before. Like, you think it's a choice, and it is a choice. It's a choice that you have to make.
I don't think it's a choice. I think it's a series of choices. And I think that's where you get it, because everything is always taken inch by inch, right? So whether you believe in like the devil or some sort of adversary, whatever, I believe that you can make choices that lead you 1 inch at a time down a certain path. And I've seen it. I mean, I watched it with you. I've seen it with other people. It starts with the smallest choice. It starts with really small choices of doing this rather than that. And it doesn't really seem helpful until you've done this so many times rather than that you now are in such a low emotional state that you make bigger and bigger bad decisions.
100%. Yeah. So you've done that. Like, you're saying to do hard things, and you've helped me a lot, like with making those choices. And it's definitely like, once I made the choice to first of all stay away from anybody that uses. Like, I've only stayed around my family and people that were positive. Like, I will never go around anybody that's using. Like, I won't use again, but the first thing is to stop, find some healthy people to be in your life.
The people around you are everything.
Everything.
They're everything.
Everything. Like, if you're around people that are going to use, you don't have a chance of ever getting sober. Like,
and that's always a choice. A lot of people don't think it's a choice to surround yourself with the people that you want in your life, but it is absolutely a choice.
Absolutely. It's the most important part of
especially if you're young.
Especially if you're young. Even I'm 50, and even now, like, the people in my life is everything. Like, being around my family and positive people that don't use. Like, even if it's your family, if you have somebody in your family that uses, you need to cut them out of your life. Like, if you the number one thing, and then just start making like better choices. Just like you said, but that's number one. An addict has to make a choice. I'm done being, because the cycle won't end. It won't end until you make that choice to be done with it. Like, when I realized that I got in that truck and I made that, I didn't even think about what was going to happen. Like, and the consequences were the same every time. Like,
but most likely you had made a series of bad decisions before you made that one bad decision.
I hadn't made the choice because to be done.
You had to get yourself into a low emotional state to not even think of the consequences rather than just hitting it.
Like, the people at my work were kind of my group. Like, that was the only people I knew out there. I didn't know anybody in Wyoming except for the people that were in the halfway house. I made some friends, a couple friends that, TJ was one of my friends. He was somebody that I met in the halfway house, really good guy. And we got the job together, and we made this pact to not use, and like he was working there with me, and when I used, and then I lied to him, he was super disappointed in me and mad, and then I he kind of helped me with it. Well, he ended up getting in a wreck on the job site and getting laid off, and that job was kind of everything to him. And then he started using, and he just got his kids back. He was doing great. Like he got his kids, he got a house, he was super happy. And then he got that wreck at work and he got laid off. And then that downtime started using again, and ended up, I stayed in touch with him, but I could tell he wasn't doing good. And when I came home, he called me and he said, look, I can't, he said, I keep hanging out with these people. He was like, he was in Casper, Wyoming. He said, I can't get out. I can't get out of the circle. I don't have anybody. He's like, you're not here. So I told him to go up to a VOA. He had to, his PO gave him, or he was on probation also. And so he went, last time I talked to him, he was going to the VOA, and I thought he was there. I thought he was doing okay. They can't call anybody. And then I got a call like 2 months later from somebody that we worked with, and he told me that TJ was dead. So the cops had killed him. He must have left the treatment center. I don't know how long he was there, but he didn't finish it. But he left and went back to Casper. Got pulled over with somebody. He was a passenger in the car, and it was in the middle of the night, and the driver jumped out and took off running, and TJ jumped over into the driver's seat and started driving away, and the cop jumped into the passenger window, and TJ kept driving. And this is what's frustrating to me, was they could have let him just go and catch him. He didn't have guns. I don't know what was in the car. It wasn't there, but this cop jumps in the passenger window, and TJ kept driving. Well, the cop pulled his gun and shot him in the head and killed him. And super frustrating to me. Like, the cop put himself. I mean, I know this is a tough situation. TJ was wrong, 100% wrong. But from the perspective of, I'm never going back to prison, and they don't know. You don't know how horrible that feeling is. Like, you will seriously. I did it. I was in the same try. I tried to take off and drive away when they pulled me into Kaysville. They ended up tasing me. But you'll do anything to not go back. When you know you're going back, you just as soon die. So anyway, the cop threw himself in that window, put himself in that. Could have just let him drive away.
Bad training, but it's really hard to judge a cop in the heat of a moment when someone's.
I miss my friend. I know how he felt. I knew he didn't want to go back, and I also, So anyway, I lost him. He didn't finish. I wish he would have stayed up there and finished that treatment, but he was a good dude and struggled with it, and he died.
So anyway, kids, make good decisions.
Make good decisions. if you use or you get on experimentation, it's there's no good to come from it. There's a lot of people pull out of it, but addiction's gonna win most of the time. And it's gonna be I've had a long, hard road of those lessons that I've learned, and it's taken 20 years from me for sure. I've spent 12 years locked up, and I'm happy that my life weren't. I mean, it was definitely lessons that I was supposed to learn, and I'm grateful for what I have now and where I'm at in my life, and I'm happy. I'm happy for the first time in a long time. So
good.
So if I didn't know you and I was a bet man, I would say you're going back to prison.
You would say that?
Yeah. If I didn't know you.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
100%.
saying,
My
man.
PO. So I just got off paper. I got 2 days ago. My PO took me off. He said when he got my paper, when I transferred back, he was like, I didn't think I had a chance, but I never got I kind of got off.
So you made different choices
Different
down to the
choices.
smallest choice, who you surrounded yourself with, little things, making yourself uncomfortable. It really does start with the small choices.
It does.
100%. And
does.
people don't see that a lot of time. It's what are you choosing to do on a regular basis? And it goes down to the smallest choice. Like, and this is one thing I learned early was, like, I always wanted to be like super successful and have all this, but then I wasn't really like, I just like wanted to get lucky basically. But then I listened to a podcast by Andy Frisella actually that said, if you make small choices such as pissing on the toilet seat and not cleaning it off, or going to the grocery store and not taking the cart back to the cart return.
Yeah.
Little things like that, you're never going to be successful.
Yes.
And I started paying attention to those little things, and I started myself trying to make better decisions in the little things, and they compound. They compound and they compound and they compound. And then when you make good decisions on the small things, the more you do that, the better the bigger things go for you every single time.
100%.
And so all your decisions, they always compound. So if you can focus on making sometimes almost always the more uncomfortable, harder decision that's better for you, even if it's just really small things,
Just trying to do
they
the right
always
thing.
compound.
Yeah, just trying to do the right thing. So I made a couple of goals to just focus on being a better person, being a better father, being a better uncle, being a better son. Right?
Yeah, like little things. And people, and like even like, what's the first thing you do in the day? I make my bed versus not making my bed. You know, just little things like when you make one good decision, then you make another good decision, then you make another good decision. But if you make one bad decision, just really small, then your next decision, you're probably like, I don't really, you know.
And I realized that too when I kind of struggled and started drinking again, and I thought, I can just do this. I was dating somebody that kind of drank, and it just kind of slowly compounded. And then I started not spending as much time at work.
And then you get a lower and lower emotional state, and you just go lower and lower and lower until eventually, even though you don't want to do it at all, you use drugs again because you're in an emotional state where you don't know how you got there, but you're there.
Compromises
and now
your
it doesn't
decision
matter.
and compromises. That's why it lowers your inhibitions when you drink. Like definitely recognize. I feel it's been about a month now, I think, but I feel better. I went and started doing the same thing. I started going to the gym every day or working out every day and writing in my journal and meditating, even though I'm not very good at it, meditating every day. Like those things helped. Just getting into a routine of positive things that are so beneficial. And
Which is why starting your day off right is important. It's very important.
Like to get up and to do like 15 minutes of meditation, and I've been doing that, and I write a page of my journal, and then I start my day working, and those things, just that mindset, just getting in that mindset of being positive, thinking, okay, things are going to go good. This my life is better right now, and I'm super happy where I'm at, but you're 100% right. Like those decisions, like the gym's been a huge part to. I feel better. I feel healthy. I'm stronger. I'm in a better physical.
Having control over your body is so much more important than people understand.
It is.
If you don't have control over your own body, you're not going to feel like you have control over anything in your life. But if you do have control over your body, there's a good chance you're going to feel like you have control over most of your life.
Yeah. Feel good about yourself.
I think that's super important for sure.
Yeah.
So if people want to ask you questions, what's your Instagram? Do you know?
Bart Mac 23.
So on Instagram, if you want to message him, ask him, follow him. He's going to start putting out more content because he's apart from this podcast being probably a little bit hard to listen to because that was a hard 20 years of your life. You're also very funny. Super fun to be around, always happy. So like everybody that meets you loves you.
And you don't fight anymore.
And no more fighting.
Because if you did, you'd kick my ass.
Yeah, I lost an ear. I only got half an ear. I got my ear bit off in one of my fights.
Go follow him on Instagram, and he'll eventually tell his story on Instagram.
Yep.
How about that?
Any questions, especially any addicts that are struggling?
Yeah, that's the cool thing is you can help a lot of people
I would love
too.
to.
You know what I mean?
If they're struggling, need some advice, want to talk.
Because you've probably seen it all.
I have. I know that world, and I would love to help anybody that's struggling with addiction. I'm 100% there to be talked to. Like I know I've been through every stage of it.
There's literally nothing you could judge pretty much anyone for at
Nothing.
this point because you've been through a lot, and so
would love to help anybody that's struggling. So, and then you reach out. So that would be great. So
yeah. And maybe next time we'll go more into conspiracy theories and stuff that's funner to talk about.
Sorry, that was kind of a lot, but
no, it's a good story. I think that a lot of people need to hear, and even if it's hard to listen to, it's educational at least for people. So
I hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
got it, Bart.
I'm
Thanks,
super
man.
proud of you guys for what you're doing. I've loved your podcast. You guys had some great topics. The moon's a spaceship.
Too many drugs for you, Bart. 3 hours of drugs, and then by the way, the moon's a spaceship.
Just keep your eye on it for the guy that's driving it because he moves it around.
all right, guys. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you guys.